is that the myriad things going forth and realizing themselves is awakening. The sense of fullness. You know when you get a gallon jug of water and it's completely full and you try to shake it, it doesn't slosh. That's Tenchi Ipai no Shome in the small scale. It doesn't feel like you're moving anything around because it's completely full. Right? If it was half full, you know it, right? You can feel it sloshing around back and forth. But our life is completely full. We're completely full of heaven and earth, and we don't know it. We don't feel it. Just like we don't feel the water moving in that full jug. That's the verification. If you don't realize it, it's because you're so full. You're not full of it.
In reality, you are it, but it is not you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one way to say it.
Isn't that in the harmony? I think that's
right. In the harmony is different. You are not it, but it is.
It's Jewel Mirror.
Jewel Mirror, right? Jewel Mirror. It's Jewel Mirror, sorry.
You are not it, but it is you.
Mm-hmm. It's you.
So Buddha, I just give you I want to give you two examples, one from the time of the Buddha and one from modern times. And that is when the Buddha had his awakening, he says, I and all beings together wake up. It's not him by himself. It's never the Buddha. So when we see the Buddha, we've got to practice seeing all beings together. That image on the altar is not an individual. It's all beings. It's the entire universe. And it's just compacted here in the form of what we call Buddha. And on the altar, so we have on the altar itself is all beings. The entire universe is encapsulated in that image on the altar. That's what we're really bowing to. It's not bowing to an individual who is enlightened. It's bowing to all beings together. And all of the elements of the universe are found on the altar. Fire, water, earth, and air are represented. The candlelight, fire, water, we make a water offering, air and the incense, and earth and the flowers. Right? All of those elements are contained, the four great elements.
And a wooden altar too.
What's that?
A wooden altar.
And it's a wooden altar, yeah. The entire universe right there in a nutshell. Now there's another example from modern times that brings this point home. That is have you heard of these monks in Thailand that are ordaining trees?
No.
Isn't that amazing? They're ordaining trees. So this is another culture, another worldview where this is becoming a form of a kind of an ecological movement. The Bodhi tree is the tree of enlightenment, and when we see an image of the Buddha, we often see him depicted sitting under the Bodhi tree, and he did most of his practice in forests. His community, the monks, lived in the forests. So with the deforestation of Thailand, it's like over 80% of Thailand has been deforested over the past several decades. And the monks are kind of the prophets, so to speak, in that region, calling attention to this problem of deforestation. Because the forests are considered sacred. That's where they do their practice. That's where the Buddha woke up. That's what provided shelter for the Buddha, those trees. No tree, no enlightenment. Right? The tree
trees, no earth.
The trees, no earth. Yeah. So by ordaining the tree, it affects the worldview of the people who are cutting the trees, because they're Buddhist and they see the tree then as, this tree is sacred. And how do how do they ordain the tree? Well, they put a monk's robe around the tree, around the circumference of the tree. I'm not sure exactly how they tie it up there, but because some of these trees are really huge, but I saw images of it where the monk's robe is completely spread out and it's wrapped around the trunk of the tree so that it marks this tree. Don't cut this tree down. This tree serves an important purpose. It's not just utilitarian. It's not just a utilitarian tree. And what's interesting about this particular movement is that it's not antagonistic like we see in the United States. A lot of environmental movements are somewhat antagonistic. They kind of try to rile people up. There's a lot of shame around it, a lot of guilt tripping towards the oil industry and that kind of thing. And a lot of aggression is generated from those kind of movements. But the movement in Thailand has been non-antagonistic. How they did that is they matched what they were doing with love of the country itself. In 1996, for example, they made an initiative to ordain 50 million trees in honor of the 50th year of the King Brahma IX's rule. So they synchronized their action with the ruler's 50th year of ruling. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, to make it. So they were honoring not just the trees and sacralizing them, but also honoring the leader of the country who could actually prevent this from happening. And in 2010, this idea of ordaining trees became so popular that in 2010, contestants from Miss Universe Thailand were ordaining trees. Isn't that interesting? The contestants for a beauty pageant were ordaining trees, I guess, to become more popular or appealing. So the monks have been working hard to educate people about the importance of not overlogging. So the word that I think can be helpful for us today and how we see ourselves is anthropocentric. You guys know what that means?
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
Human-centered.
Right. Anthro means human, like anthropology. Anthropocentric, so everything, the universe centers around human beings. In the time of prior to Galileo and Copernicus, it's like everything revolved around the earth, right? The sun and the moon, everything revolved around the earth. It was a earthocentric view. And then Copernicus comes along and says, no, wait a minute. It's not the sun that is revolving around us. We're revolving around the sun. So it became a solo-centered. But in our times, it's anthropocentric. We've kind of turned that on its head and say, well, no, the universe revolves around the human being.
Yeah, this is the Anthropocene.
Right.
Geological. They decided this is the geological time now called Anthropocene. I think it started around the 1950s or so. Where
Is that so?
Yeah, I think they finally
I
decided,
didn't realize that.
based on various technical reasons, but they think around early 1950s that the Anthropocene is a geological.
Will you say it again real slowly?
Anthropocene.
Anthropocene, thank you.
Anthropocene, yeah.
Got it.
C-E-N-E, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd point out that's the year I was born.
Oh, was it really?
It all started with me.
Oh, okay. You're a product of the Anthropocene.
Source.
So
Anthropocene.
what Buddhism has to offer, what Dogen has to offer in this particular time of a profound anthropocentrism, where humans see themselves as being the center of everything, is a anthropocosmic vision, where humans are not the center, but part of a greater whole that is revolving around something much greater. So what does that look like? What might that look like? It means including other, possibly not just including humans in our conversations, but also the more than humans in our conversation, right? So in the case of these monks, the trees get to be included in part of the conversation just by the act of ordaining them, putting the Buddhist robe around them. How do our decisions here in Nebraska affect the waterways? How do the decisions that we make affect the waterways? How do they affect other species? That's including other species in the conversation, because right now we just think about how our decisions affect other human beings, which is important, but how do these decisions, right, affect other creatures? How do our farming practices here in the Midwest, how do they affect the other species? Right, if you think about the biodiversity that was in the prairies prior to being converted to farmland in Iowa, Iowa is the most changed land of all of the states in the United States. It's like 97% of the land has been converted for farm and other uses, and so the biodiversity is very much wiped out. But one of the good things is that farmers and others are starting to put in prairie strips so that it helps to increase that biodiversity, because that biodiversity we're coming to see is necessary for the overall health of the ecosystem. And when the floods come, it's those deep-rooted prairie grasses that are containing the water. This is just one instance where biodiversity and the prairie strips are so helpful. What else? I mean, there's so many different ways of responding to this question of how do we put this big self into practice, into action in our daily life. There are many ways. Maybe you have some ideas here, but I'm thinking one of the things that in Ames that we're doing is they are actually paying people to convert their lawns to prairies. They'll give you money, they'll reimburse you for planting prairie plants in your land. And so we did that. We
Like
did
in your
that
front yard?
in our front yard, yeah. I mean, it looks terrible, but
The bees love it.
yeah, we get loads of insects in the summertime, and we also have stuff in the back as well. And we helped a Sangha member to plant her lawn in prairie, and now she had all this diversity started returning. So, we can be creative, start becoming creative. Maybe the neighbors don't like it, but when you have a city that says, "Hey, we'll do this for you," that's supportive. That's support. So those are good signs. And there's other things. One of the things that I love doing is composting. So it's just a wonderful way to see our connection with the land when you take the food that's wasted, and instead of putting it in plastic, you actually put it on the ground and you see how it decomposes, and the insects go for it, the animals go for it, and the microbes in the soil then get nourished, and then you take that soil and put it on other things. You can put it on your flowers or wherever you want to plant stuff, and it becomes you can see this interact. You start to we've always lived like that as human beings. We've always lived like that, and it's just in the last 100 years or so that we've really started to lose that sense of our reciprocity with the land. So now we have to make greater efforts at this time to reestablish that sense of connection, if for no other reason, because it nourishes us, not just physically, but we need to know that, we belong here, we're part of this, where we are the consciousness dimension of the universe. We're the universe that wakes up to seeing itself, being able to reflect upon itself. That's what the myriad things going forth are awakening to themselves means. That the myriad things come forth and realize themselves is awakening.